really talk about the cost on the individuals involved, which is something I really love about great examples of whistleblower films. And really we met Rob, I met Rob for the first time in May, June of 2018, and met all of the key people who play principal roles in this story. And brought a new writer on, Mario Correa, and we sort of started fresh in a way and got into research firsthand, and that evolved into what this script was. And we were shooting it by the beginning of this year.
That's amazing. You shot it starting January, and here it is finished. That seems to be unheard of. Mark, Todd Haynes is, I don't know how to say this without sort of classifying you in some pigeonhole, but you're known for, well, when I think of you, I think of lately female-centric films that are very rich in their design and minutiae. Obviously this is very rich in minutiae too, in a different way. So Mark, what made you think Todd Haynes is the director for this?
Well, I always wanted to be one of the females in his movies. And I just couldn't understand why he wasn't casting me. As I was, developing it early on, I could see it, and I could feel what I wanted it to be. And Todd's name came up. And I thought, that's an amazing idea for this. And actually it was Safe that had elements in it that I've liked, that this kind of impending malign force that's invisible, that's sort of always on the edges, and this alienation of our hero, Julianne Moore, and this toxic world that she's living in, although we don't know what it is, and we just know it's out there and all around us. And we had a very fast-paced, procedural, very by-the-numbers kind of political insider thriller type script. But I wanted so much deeper, something much deeper. I felt like you had to really understand these characters and care about them. And I wanted that spaciousness that his films have, both visually and in the character work. And I am so grateful that you decided to do it, and you did such a beautiful job, and it's crafted so beautifully. And so, yeah, I got to be one of the women in his movies.
What I found very remarkable in the film was the soundscape, especially in that first scene. It really struck me with the swimmers. I felt a little like it was Jaws. There was a wonderful, I don't think it was music, it's a sound effect of sort of ominous doom. I was sure some deformed creature was going to come out and get them. But that kept going through the whole film, not a sort of typical score.
Yeah, no, Leslie Schatz is a sound designer I worked with on many movies, and he's incredibly artful and thoughtful. And this was an invitation to sort of create an atmosphere where you feel the chemical influence sort of under your seat. And in that scene, it was a sort of obvious little nod to Jaws, where the danger is not a shark in the water, it's the water. And it plants a seed and a question about an enigma that we then discover the root of accidentally with this character who stumbles onto this story. But yeah, the sound was an important part. And the music, we brought in a composer I hadn't worked with before, Marcelo Zarvas, who I think leapt to the occasion and really did something special with the film.
And Rob, you consulted on the film, so not only is it based on you, but you were involved daily in the film. What was that experience like, and how does it compare to the arduous nature of the law?
It was an awesome experience, yeah. I mean, they actually were able to come film in Cincinnati and in our offices. So, I was working at the time right there and was able to come in and watch and help. They didn't often, obviously, but it was just a fantastic group, and I really couldn't think of better people to do this. And they did just a terrific job of taking complex information that spanned a long period of time and bringing it all together in a way that people can really feel the impact of what it had, what kind of impact this had on the people involved, the community involved, Mr. Tennant, his family, within the law firm. So, it was just a really fantastic experience.
And what did Mark do specifically to get to know you or get inside you to play you as albeit a real one, a character?
Well, we had a long conversation at first when, at first I was a little surprised to hear that he was calling, to say the least. But we had a long conversation about what his interest in bringing this story out, which was terrific. I thought anything that could get this information out to more people and be able, more people can understand what really happened here and what kind of impact this really had on this community. And then he came out and met with me, with my wife Sarah, with our boys. We spent a lot of time together. We drove out to West Virginia together, and we spent a lot of time talking back and forth about what really happened, what these people were like, what people were thinking at the time, and I think they did a terrific job in capturing a lot of that.
Mark, I think most people saw you defending the film Gasland quite strongly. We know you're an activist in the environmental arena. I take it this film is quite personal to you. You produced it too.
Yeah, it is. I read it, and in 2016, this is after the election, I made it a point to say that I really want to take that aspect of what I do, that part of my life, and bring it more to filmmaking. And that's when I was also started to develop material. And it was funny because this landed in my mailbox at home, and then literally I had like 6 friends send it to me the same day. Have you seen this? And my agents reached out, and it was obvious to all of us. I mean, I'd done so much work in the water space already. I'd been to all these frontline communities. I was very intimately, I understood the nature of this fight. And it was just mind-blowing to me that you had this, this 50-year criminal thing happen and a cover-up, and nobody knew about it. And it's probably one of the biggest crimes in corporate history, and nobody knew about it. And this one guy walked through those 20 years alone, and I was like, this is a movie for our times. It's not just about PFOA, this is about a whole system that is repeatedly letting us down. And I was like, I really want to see this movie made, even if I'm not the one who's acting in it.
Plus all that shuffling of papers in Spotlight must have prepared you for playing this role.
Yeah,
Did you think, oh God, boxes of papers again?
Yep. Pretty much.
Todd, to get back to your filmography, do you see this as a departure for you, or do you see it as a continuation for you in your career? Was it something you wanted to do, a genre picture, slightly perhaps out of your wheelhouse?
Well, like I said, this is a genre of film that I love, that Mark wouldn't have known what an avid sort of follower I was of some of the best examples of the whistleblower film, these sort of, pensive, paranoia-riddled stories of lone people who stumble onto these stories like All the President's Men or The Insider or Silkwood, a lot of these movies coming out in the 1970s. And there's something about how the truth teller gets stigmatized and the cost of standing up to systems of power. And something beautiful about this process that unfolds where a story takes them by surprise. And they're kind of in the dark at the beginning of these stories. And this is absolutely true for the story of Rob with this one, how Wilbur Tennant lands this box of videotapes in his office and tells him, take a look at this. And it harkens back to his own childhood and his own relationship to another state. And all of these sort of fragile delineations of class are evoked, and the status even within Taft Law, the defense firm alone. And all of these sort of delineations of class and standing and pedigree have to be broached and traversed for a story like this to take hold and be pursued. And then you keep discovering the depth and breadth of the campaign against powerless people, motivated by, ruthless financial interests. And you get enraged, the subjects get enraged, right? But then power gets onto you and starts to push back. And then you start to feel the peril that these people are put in. And that was all in this story. And it both binds all of these people in this sort of network of participants together, and then it also separates them back into their own communities and their lives, and they're alienated and ostracized in the workplace or in their communities or in their churches. And and yet he kept going, and the results are monumental of what he uncovers.
But Rob, it does make me wonder if you hadn't pushed forward with this, if you hadn't looked through all those boxes, we might never know this. The other question I have is a very naive, non-legal mind, is that, in those boxes of discovery, was the information that DuPont had done the research and they'd found out this stuff. Why do they not destroy that evidence? Like, why do they keep memos around saying causes birth defects, causes cancer? I feel like if they're that evil, why aren't they shredding or burning this stuff?
Well, I suspect that they were not anticipating anybody was actually going to start going through all those boxes. Having worked on that side, so to speak, for a number of years, I mean, that was not uncommon approach. Just bury them with paper, and nobody's ever going to look through that. Or you might have a couple of key documents. You just bury it in a ton of other stuff and hope it's not found. This was the days before things were produced electronically, on a disk or on a computer where you could search just by putting keywords in. And this required manually going through lots and lots on paper and just putting it in order. And I don't know how many of people at the local law firm that DuPont was using had actually looked at the documents before they turned them over, just thinking, well, nobody's really going to pay any attention to this. We got a lot fewer documents later.
And what is the current status of this issue with DuPont?
It's been very interesting to watch. After the settlement there that you see referenced at the end, that was for all of the folks that already had one of these 6 diseases. There were about 3,500 or so of the people in the community that came forward. We know there were probably a lot more, but there were probably a lot of people in that community that did not want to bring those claims against DuPont. But after that was settled, we continue to have people in that community diagnosed almost every day with cancer and other diseases, and they're pursuing those claims, and we're still helping them with those claims. But what we found out is since then, it's not just PFOA. PFOA is one of this entire class of forever chemicals called PFAS. These things get out in the environment, completely man-made chemicals that get out there and they stay there virtually forever. They will not break down under natural conditions. And they're getting in all of us. They're getting in our blood. They're getting in wildlife. But there are a whole bunch of them now. And we realize as we start sampling finally start sampling across the country, this stuff's in water all over the place. It's in blood. And with these other additional chemicals, it took us 20 years going through all this information to dig out what we now know about this one, PFOA. Now we know there's all these others. And what we're hearing is, well, there's no science on that. There's no science that proves it causes harm. So I'm bringing a new case that I've filed on behalf of, we're trying to bring it on behalf of everyone in the country who now has these chemicals in their blood, to force the people that put them out there into our blood to do the studies to prove what they will in fact do to us. Instead of having all of us be exposed and then telling us we have to prove that it's safe. The goal is to have the companies have to do those studies. So I'm working on that right now.
Mark, you have a line in the film where you say chemistry was not my strongest class at school. I agree. I'm with you there. How did you manage to sort of get your head and tongue around this complicated? I mean, is it just like you learn the script? Did you really dig more into it and start understanding the science that you were talking about?
Sure. I deposed him for hours and hours and hours. I text him, at 11 o'clock at night. I call him. I watched his videos. I did as much as I possibly could to understand it, just to at least have a working concept of it, so I would sound like I knew what I was talking about. I had him read things to me, so that I could hear how he read, how he, what did you drink? What did you drink? What did you put cream in your coffee? I even one day when I was supposed to meet him in the atrium of the Taft building, I got there a little bit early and I followed him around without him knowing it.
Unknowingly.
Yes.
Creepy.
That's a little creepy. So I could steal his walk.
He might have thought you were like a DuPont, tough guy.
Yeah.
The thing you don't see when you see Rob sitting here today, because Rob, the light has shone on this story, and it's a different guy.
He never used to smile.
No, and look how handsome he is.
I played. You're much more handsome than I played you. I'm sorry about that. I owe you an apology.
Mark went to that dark place. That person who was bearing the weight of all of this on his physical being, and that's why you don't even recognize Mark in this film. Initially, he is utterly transformed and played a character I've never seen you play before. Who's so carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, and has this basic constitutional skepticism about information and a lack of orthodoxy, and an objectivity that he brought to these labors. And all the actors in the film, but it's just so true. It's so astonishing to me. It's such a restrained and beautifully calibrated performance that I think induces the audience to lean in closer and observe every detail of his changes as he starts to find his voice, and he has to figure out a fight. But it's true for our entire ensemble of actors who treated this with such respect and so relished the time they could spend with the actual people who were around us on set. And it was true for Tim Robbins, who played Tom Turpin, would Skype with Turp, and Bill Pullman, who would talk to Harry Ditzler on the phone several times a day, and Mayor Winningham, who played Darlene Kiger and spent so much time with the Kigers and Joe Kiger. And then with that we still have Jim Tennant, Wilbur Tennant's brother, still walking this earth. It's such a miracle. This man with this spirit and this clarity that Wilbur had, a clarity about sort of what was right and what was wrong, and a sort of insistence that ultimately the truth would come out. And you know what? The truth did come out because of Rob, and because of this insistence, even with the pushbacks, and even with the cover-ups, and even with the refusals and the setbacks. So you leave this movie feeling, it's not a victory yet. We have to keep we take action and how we become knowledgeable and aware. But
well, what can we do on that note? Let's end on the positive note as to what we can all do moving forward, because there's a part of me that just thinks it's all over. You know, the water's gone, the coral reefs are going. I mean, everything. You know, it's doom and gloom out there.
If
so
you're
how do we
losing
be
hope,
positive?
you're not doing enough. How many times have I had to tell myself that over the years when you're getting your ass handed to you by like some giant publicity firm for the fossil fuel industry, or you see millions of dollars come into your state house with lobbying from a fossil fuel agency, and you just feel like it's lost, and then you keep trudging along, and then all of a sudden some little miracle happens, and like you end up banning fracking in our state. And like when we get together and we fight together, we win. I mean, it happens a lot. We lose sometimes, but we win. This is the thing is, we need a revolution of spirit, a political revolution in this country that literally takes this whole system and like makes it responsive to us. And I always say, they're making you pay. It's corporate socialism when they're talking about, do they have to regulate these chemicals? It's corporate socialism when they allow them to put this stuff on the market knowing it's going to harm us. It harms us. We have to pay to make ourselves better, and we're in this vicious circle. And if the state had any stake in our health care, our food and our water and our air would get cleaned up really fast. We all are talking about this now. And this movie is coming out at the right moment to talk about this. And it's a model. It's like a case study in what we're up against. But we're also talking about revolutionary ideas about making this government more responsive to us as human beings and not so slavish to corporations and their bottom line, which is God of the money. It's just pure money. So keep
Don't
going.
give up.
No,
Don't
man,
give up.
we can't give up now. The
I
light
think-
is there. It's behind the clouds, but it's there. The sun is still there.
So everyone needs to see this film. So everyone here needs to tell someone to go see this film. It opens next Friday, limited release, and then we'll continue to expand. So thank you all so much for being here. Rob,
and
Mark,
for all the
Todd.
other cities of theaters who joined
Everyone.
us tonight. Hey everybody, thank you so much for coming to see this movie, and tell your friends about it, and talk about what this movie's about and how it might have affected you in your life. Thank you for coming.
And let's go kick some ass.